and now when he's asked about the fate of these thousands of jobs that rely on him keeping his word, he says, who cares?
Mr. Speaker, it's only Monday. Look at how excited they are because they know there's good news in the budget, Mr. Speaker.
If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr.
It's too bad that that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears all of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Canada know that this government has their back. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest and telling Canadians.
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
No matter how hard the days get for average Canadians, like the 2.2 million Canadians that go to a food bank every day, it's always a good day for Brookfield. And the latest good news for Brookfield is a $500 million contract with the European Space Agency, which is housed by property owned 50% by Brookfield. So why is it the priority of this government to line the pockets of the Prime Minister's former company with a $500 million contract when there's 2.2 million Canadians lining up at food banks because they can't afford to feed themselves and a 6.9% unemployment rate? Why?
Welcome to the nap, the no answer period. Boy, have we got a show lined up for you today, where we cover the question period, prefaced by a review of the far left evil that has beset our land and the events that surround it. And when I say far left evil, it's because the far left doesn't believe in a higher power, and everything that they do has no consequences. It gives us misery. I call that evil. The nap precedes a question period by 45 minutes, and we'll cover the lower house until the government decides to stop showing up. We also keep score. Keep a description of that down below in the description for this video. If you're watching this on repeat, please leave us a comment. The chat is up while we're live, so feel free to comment there. And I'd like to thank all my followers and subscribers for following and subscribing. Please like, share, subscribe as always, and comments drive the algorithm when I'm not driving it down with my forbidden words. Well, let's get right into it. Let's go and go into our show file. There we go. As you can see, the House is sitting, and they are very active. You see a lot of activity yesterday had to do a lot with what happened over the weekend with what Mark Carney said regarding how he does not care. A little bit more on that. Meanwhile, a public service announcement was the reminder that the Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization controls most of the propaganda, media that you will find out there in Canada. That's the Dead Tree media, along with digital media and the old mainstays like Global, CTV, and of course CBC. and anyone else that needs to be working off the Canadian grift, which gives them approximately close just under 30 grand per person that works in their qualified Canadian journalism organization that they get from we taxpayers. That's right. All they need to do is be recognized by CRA. They get all this money, and for some reason, they only get recognized if the government likes them. That's right. What a strange way to control your media. And speaking of non-controlled media, as we always do, we give an update on the situation with the ostriches. Let's get into that quickly and listen to this short clip on their future as to what direction they're going to go regarding their activism. Because obviously something needs to be done. We can't just let Death Canada, also known as CFIA, the death squads. Of course, Health Canada is also known as Death Canada, given how they're really not supporting much people in health these days because they're overstrained. Anyways, let's get into this.
There's a better time for you to be getting into this as a voice for farmers, which of course the association you're in the middle of building, of starting, because this is the optimum time to be a voice for farmers, because farmers don't really have a voice, and I'll let you elaborate on that right now.
Yeah, I just think, you know what, that farmers do have a voice. So many of them do, but they just needed to be reminded that they do. That they are the strength. They are the backbone to our country, to our nutritional food supply. Their hardworking, dedicated nature of loving their animals. It doesn't matter if they're meant for food or if they've been put into research for innovation, new ways that could have helped humanity with therapeutics, natural science. It doesn't matter. Farmers love their animals. It doesn't.
This game.
All right, pitfalls of using platform with no. There we go.
That there are animals, it's our land. And when you have an agency that is supposed to be there to call and support you along the way, and if there's a problem, they're supposed to guide you. What we've seen here is their theatrical display of their egotistical nature, that they can just come and they're a professional killing machine. They are not proactive, preventative. They're not there to heal or treat or preserve.
Yeah, it's like the government went out of its way to hire psychopaths in their departments, the kind that refuse to engage with the public, the kind that refuse to actually provide what they're there for. Never were there scarier words said than, I am from the government and I'm here to help you. So, a little bit more on this.
A lot of rubbish throughout this whole occupation. There was no legitimate research going on here at Universal Ostrich Farms. There was nothing of importance going on here. Don't look too closely. Do you think they stole it? Do you think the CFI stole it, the research?
In my opinion, yeah. In my opinion, you watch. Everybody better red flag if you start to see strong antibody therapeutics, or that they're using, there's new innovative technology that all of a sudden comes out, which we already know is happening, and they don't want to agree, they don't want to admit it. But L'Enfant Medical got almost $1 million and to create the diagnostic test kits for farmers for their animals using antibodies. And so they had all the offer and our opportunity in the world to help collaborate with us for free. We wanted to work with them. We were giving them the science. We were giving them hope. We were giving them our solutions.
So we know what happened there. They didn't want to collaborate. They didn't want to deal with the farmers, and so they destroyed their farm, destroyed their animals, left behind apparently a toxic area that nobody's allowed to go into. And then they stole the eggs. They stole the eggs that were there. But it's even worse than that. Do I have that other piece here? So yes, so the Supreme Court of Canada gave the CFIA a stay of execution, not Universal Ostrich Farms. The CFIA then proceeded to steal the research and start killing or removing the ostriches. right? Because we don't really know. We don't really know. They closed everything off. They started counting ostriches ahead of time, and it looks like some were missing, right? Because they wouldn't allow any drone footage. Near the end, it had to be a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces to climb up the mountain and use a high-powered camera lens to go in and shoot some footage of the aftermath of the destruction, the mass culling that happened. But there's no record, there's no receipts of where all this, and of course, afterwards, people were tracking down some of the corpses because they were having issues with disposing some of them as well. The ones that didn't end up in the grinding machine that they had brought in. It's all very, very strange, and this is very typical of this Liberal government that they work in darkness. They hide in darkness. They were going out of their way here to knock down existing surveillance that the farm had on their property. They went and took over a neighbor's property. It's the entire situation is horrible. So when Katie here is starting up a new organization to help farmers, yeah, because when you have an authoritarian organization like the CFIA that refuses to engage with the public, that is taking decisions, that is reducing the amount of food in our food supply. They they've killed so many chickens. Like was it 15, 20% of the edible food source of chickens in Canada? Why do you think chicken prices are going up so much? And they've been doing the same thing down south as well, right? Oh, look, a chicken fell over and died. We got to kill them all. This is the future under globalism to control your food supply. So they bring rules like this in for safety. Oh, it's for your safety. We have to kill all your food for safety. Absolutely ridiculous, but there it is. So if we move over here to New Brunswick, apparently they're facing a record surge in asylum claims. Now you go through and it's like a 305. You're thinking, oh, I thought it was like a record surge. Well, asylum claims. I mean, every single person here that's an asylum claimant, that's somebody that has to take care of them. And of course, we're taking care of these people. And what is it exactly that they are entitled for? Well, let's listen to Mario.
Over 50 years, I'll turn 65, and I'll have worked in Canada for over 50 years. Like millions of Canadians out there, I'll have worked my butt off only to be able to be eligible for a pension of about $1,200 per month. For all those who work full-time, have kids, buy groceries, have to pay insurance, you know $1,200 doesn't get you anywhere. This is where it gets good. When you come into the country and you designate yourself as part of the LGBTQ community, there's a special program that gives you 12 months of income through what's called the RAP program, the Resettlement Assistance Program. In this program, RAP, as you can see up here, this person states that it gives their clients a monthly allowance of nearly $1,900 a month, and they're entitled to a monthly earnings of $949.70 under the Employment Incentive Policy of the RAP program. In addition, they're also eligible for the child tax benefit, a monthly amount of approximately $1,800. The client's also eligible for a monthly allowance of $500 from RAP top-up housing allowance. The family also gets a startup allowance of $8,326 for basic household needs, furniture, and clothing. But when you add the $1,900, the $1,800, the nearly $1,000, and then the $500, that's $5,000 a month, not including the upfront $8,000 check that they get. See, when Leanne Rood, the Conservative Member of Parliament, asked the Liberals, Paul Chiang, before he was given the boot by the Liberals, telling people that they should kidnap a Conservative, he gave this information as well, that when they come here, they can also get a 140 per night room, and then they can get meals of $84 per day per claimant. And you want to know what kind of refugees we're taking in? We own a property management company in Toronto. We only do furnished rentals. One division's high-end and the other division's super low budget, mostly geared to students and newcomers. A refugee agency rents units from time to time to place refugees while they are waiting for more permanent housing. Yesterday was a property fixing something before the agency brought these clients, refugees. I ended up meeting them, two middle-aged women, well-dressed, well-spoken, and perfect English. And I asked where they coming from, and they said Barbados. Last I checked, there was no wars or civil unrest, so how the heck are they here claiming refugee status? That's a great question. What the heck are we doing having an open border with blank checks being given to fake refugees?
Indeed. Right? Now, of course, it goes on to explain some more care that they get. But here we have people living homeless in Canada, 2.2 million at food banks. And this is what we're doing, replacing the population. Oh, they kept saying it was a conspiracy theory. Oh, no, the government's not trying to replace you. Well, what do you call it when you basically pay people to come into your country to live off your taxes, while the people who were born here live in homeless camps and shelters and out on the street? Oh, what do you do for them? Oh, you give them free drugs. Yes, you give them harm reduction, keep them happy in their little soma states that you've created for them, and of course you don't help them out, right? If somebody homeless comes up to you for help and goes, "Hey, can I get some of those benefits that the refugees get, like including the dental and maybe a pair of glasses?" Oh, no, 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 no. That's for your replacements coming into Canada, Mr. CO2, that you are the carbon we need to get rid of as we approach net zero. Right. So, of course, let's go straight to the most despised person in my calendar. The person who decided that, as Minister of National Defense, would destroy the lives of Canadian Armed Forces members by coercing them into an experimental COVID-19 vaccine injection. Take it or lose your job. And then she did. She went on to fire 10% of the armed forces. And those that did take it and got ill and got injured, well, they were abandoned. They said, "Oh, sorry, your services are no longer required because you can't perform because you're injured now. Oh, and yeah, by the way, we're going to deny you duty of care. You have to go to the vaccine injury support program to get help. You're not going to get any help from from the VA either, because we don't recognize the COVID-19 vaccine injuries because we say it's safe and effective. That's why you still require 3 jabs after you join the Canadian Armed Forces. That's right, yeah. Of course, then when the veterans went to get some help from VISP, they said, "Oh no, you're outside of 3 years that you had to apply from the time the program started. So you waited too long, so you're not entitled to any help." But yeah, sorry, you're shit out of luck. Thanks for coming out, boys. Yeah, so that's her right there. Denied duty of care. And of course, oh, we care about the CAF. So what did they do recently? What, a $2 billion pay raise? But then of course they took 4.2 billion from the veterans to give them the $2 billion pay raise. And I'm not sure what they're doing with the other 2.2 billion, but I'm sure it's probably going towards some kind of purchase that is going to help Mark Carney's financial portfolio. So let's listen to what this cow is saying about $11 billion across the ocean, while Canadians here in Canada continue to live in ever increasing poverty and misery. They're just going to give 11 billion overseas again. Why they need to do this currently, right? Is like we told you, they are not interested in.
First of all, I want to say that Africa is Canada's largest recipient of international assistance, and our assistance will continue. Over the past 5 years, Canada has invested $4.5 billion in bilateral international assistance programming in Africa to build economies, to support health and education, and to respond to humanitarian needs. So that is the $4.5 billion, that is from the annual budget. But over and above that,
I can't. It's like we would be screaming for that kind of help here in Canada for people here in Canada. But for them, their heart is so big. It's bleeding so much for the old continent that it needs to go over there to help them, right? Not the Canadians here who live here, who've been paying taxes, or even those who haven't paying taxes are still living here. They're still the citizens here. So you would rather increase the misery here, keep us at 2.2 million to food banks every day, a number that keeps increasing, a third of them being children. Oh, but the poor Africans. That's right. Let's not take care of Canadians. Let's take care of the world. What is wrong with you people? Oh, I know what it is. When that money goes over there, a lot of it's not accounted for. There's no receipts. We don't know what the results are because they never keep track. They never give us what the results are. We don't know what they're projected to actually spend the money on. So it's just a bunch of money laundering exercise once again, and they are going to be making themselves rich off the side. Oh man, I wish Canadians would just wake up. Oh, but there's more. There's more of her. Yes, let's listen to this thing again.
Taking this relationship step by step. Since the beginning, we've been taking this relationship step by step. The first step, of course, is to ensure that the security dialogue between the countries continues. The next step, of course, was the mutual appointment of high commissioners. The third step was the joint statement and framework that we put in place, indicating the importance of the rule of law and the security and law enforcement dialogue, as well as the various areas, the sectors on which we can potentially collaborate. That brings us to the meeting between the leaders at the G20, in which the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement was launched in terms of the negotiations by the...
Now they keep saying rule of law. I can't turn this thing off. I'll turn you off. You'll see this repeated a lot in a lot of what they're saying. They keep saying this. Oh, it's a deep and fractured world. It's a dangerous world. We need to live under the rule of law. They're constantly trying to frame everything within a crisis, right? But only they have the solution. And when it comes to the rule of law, well, guess who makes the laws? I am the law. They are the law. That's the way they act, right? Even when they haven't passed a law yet, they still act like they are the law. Listen to them in Parliament. That's just the way they act. So here, the taxpayers on hook for over $1 billion after Prime Minister Mark Carney pledged new funding to a global health fund ahead of G20 summit in South Africa. Hey, 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 another $1 billion. You get $1 billion. You get $1 billion. You get $1 billion. Everybody gets $1 billion. Except Canadian taxpayers are on the hook for the $1 billion that you're promising, while the economy here continues to tank because of 10 years of liberal managed decline in Canada. Absolutely. Everybody gets $1 billion. Yes. Now, listen to this. We got to go through this.
The world's changing. The global economy is being rewired. Canada isn't retreating.
So the global economy is not being rewired. He's been trying to rewire the global economy with his global finance, whatever the GFANS stands for, but the climate cartel that he's established, the whole net zero scams that everyone is finally cashing out on because they realize that it's just a bloody scam, right? All these funds that he's developed through Brookfield, that a lot of the money is going to the Climate Fund or whatever it is, that is promoting and wanting to create more green energy products, right? That all have to be subsidized by tax dollars because none of them are efficient enough to actually run on their own. They all need subsidizing. They're so inefficient that anywhere from 20 to 80% of these green things have to be subsidized and continually subsidized while they operate, because if you were just to pay the power coming off those things, you wouldn't be able to afford it. That's why they have to subsidize the cost of the energy coming off it so that you can afford it. Yeah, so like 80% of wind power that comes off will never meet the current cost of acceptable prices for electricity. Now, if we increase our price of electricity 5 times, then it might almost be feasible to actually be on wind power. But then who would be able to afford living under those energy conditions, especially right now, the way our society is set up? So this economy that he's setting up, he's doing this on purpose. That's why he doesn't want to talk to the U.S., because the U.S. is not on board with this. Now, even big old Bill Gates finally come out and said, "Yeah, sorry, the whole climate thing was a scam, so we could make some money." But these, like anything else, Canada's always 10 years behind on everything, usually globally, when ideas. In the past, we have been anyway. And we've been so slow to come out of this ridiculous stupor through just natural brainwashing that happens to the population because of how they control the media. Right now, I think they can't control all the media all the time. And information is moving faster, faster that even he can control. And he was hoping he would not have to go down to the States. So I guess today he's just announced, oh, yeah, well, I guess I'll have to go for a visit in a couple of days now that I stepped on my dick over the last weekend saying, I just don't know. So let's listen to some more of this.
Nations, middle powers like Canada have benefited from a rules-based multilateral trading system.
Rules-based multilateral trading system, right? These rules that he's setting up for net zero. That's what these are.
Financial order. Our geography gave us privileged access to the world's largest economy and distanced us from many of the world's threats.
No, it didn't distance us from the world threats because we still actively engage in those world threats over the past governments, and just because we still have trade with those areas. But naturally, we have less trade with those areas over the giant mass of water that separates us on either side of the continent, that makes it financially less viable to trade with these people over there across the Pacific, across the Atlantic, because that cost of getting those stuff there and back is what has always been a hindrance in our trade. That's why we have this massive partner south of us, a gift from heaven to us, that we have the largest, most stable democracy on planet Earth in recorded history, that we are a partner of, that we had the longest unprotected border of for years until the liberals came along and destroyed that too. We've done everything for the past 10 years to distance ourselves from the Americans and to piss them off. And they were just waiting for somebody not ideologically compatible to come across. And now, of course, they've been using him as a boogeyman. And that has rubbed off to all these Canadians who've been brainwashed into hating just Americans and anything American against their better judgment. Americans down south of us are our natural brothers and sisters, partners in democracy. They have a different system. We even speak the same bloody language. We came pretty well from the same moral and ethical values of Christianity to build our nations. But these clowns, no, they have a different agenda and plan, right? And that's just to make himself rich with all his companies. And that's why we don't have any receipts for all the money they keep sending overseas. A little bit more, Carney.
Nous vivons pas une transition, mais une rupture.
Always with his rupture and all these little words. He's trying to make himself sound smart because he has to put the fear into people that only he has the solution, which is how he won the last election, right? Promising to get us a trade deal by July 21st. And we're past November 21st. Right. So, let's get into there's 15 minutes left. We're running out of time. Well, Brookfield admits Prime Minister profits when Brookfield does. Well, I mean, that was obvious. We've been talking about this on the show. I mean, if you have a portfolio that even if you're not allowed to deal with it, but if you know what shares are in it, you know that at the end of it, those shares that you have Brookfield that are in your portfolio, well, obviously, if the government does more business with them, your shares are going to go up. It's Occam's razor. So let's just go straight to a video I had set up here. Let's go to our first video.
Warner? Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. It doesn't hurt to have a prime minister financially tied to Brookfield's passive performance, correct?
Again, I'm not here to opine on what is appropriate or not as it relates to considerations on how political figures, public office holders.
So this was yesterday's committee meeting, Standing Committee on Access to Information and Privacy Ethics. And these questions are being asked of the Chief Operations Officer of Brookfield. And so here's Michael pulling teeth to get some information out of him.
Is that right? Less liquid?
I would describe those as less liquid.
Okay,
yes.
so we know they're still there. And many of the portfolio companies that Brookfield has lobby the government. Now, Mr. Carney's compensation based on those assets held in trust rises when those companies do well. So when they lobby for an outcome that they're seeking, a favorable outcome for their business, and his government grants it, his personal financial position improves.
I think you should say it, though, because there's only one. There's only one company in that list that's in Canada.
Okay. And that company is?
Entropy.
If the Prime Minister sold all of his Brookfield-linked assets, instead of keeping them in trust, there would be no conflict to manage. Is that correct?
I think that that's probably a correct statement, yes.
And so this is what we have isn't a Brookfield problem. The reason that you're here is because the Prime Minister has a financial interest in the performance of this company. And
yep, he sure does. Well, if only it was that one fund, right? And it's not just that one fund. Apparently, as we discovered in committee yesterday, that, well, apparently there's a much longer list of investments that we were not aware of that Carney kept. Remember, he said during the election that he had gotten rid of all his financial portfolio stuff and had relegated his investments to just money and property. Let's look at this next video here.
We've been hearing baseless accusations, but anyway, I would like to thank you, Mr. Bieber. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bieber, you stated earlier that there are 2,000 Brookfield-owned and operated companies. I would note that only 103 of these companies have been publicly disclosed by Mr. Carney and are subject to his ethics screen. In other words, 95% of Brookfield companies are not the subject of the ethics screen. Will you undertake to provide a list of the 1,900 other Brookfield companies?
I presume that in conversations and the and discussions with the ethics commissioner, that list was produced.
I'm asking you, will you undertake to provide us with a copy of that list? Because when a Brookfield company makes money, Brookfield makes money. You said that. And consistent with that, the success of any of these companies contributes to the value of Mr. Carney's stock options. And so I would submit that it is of material interest. Canadians do deserve the right to know what these other 1,900 companies are, 95% of which are not subject to the ethics screen. So again, will you undertake to provide that list?
Many of those would have no ties to Canada.
So the answer is no. Is that your answer?
I will take it away.
You'll take that under advisement?
Sure.
Okay.
I will.
Now, you stated in answer to my previous round that the 20...
Now, when it comes to taking under advisement, it's good to remind people that whenever you appear in front of a parliamentary committee, and the reason that they did is because, like you said, Entropy still has a presence in Canada. So if you want to keep doing business in Canada and your company is called before Parliament, you kind of have to send somebody to show up. And if they're asked for documents, well, then they will usually get a briefing like this.
Mr. For your testimony today. As I mentioned earlier, the clerk has made note of some of the requests that have come from committee members for the production of information. Typically what I like to do is put a date on it in terms of a response to that. So when the clerk sends you or a representative of Brookfield the information that has been requested, I am going to put a deadline on it for the receipt of that information, just so that you're aware. Okay, so thank you again for your testimony today. I'm going to dismiss you, Mr. Bieber, because I do have some committee business to deal with, and it should go very quickly. It's in relation to the...
So after all this testimony, because obviously it was rather embarrassing to the Liberals. Well, the Qualified Canadian Journalist Organization media immediately started with their disinformation campaign. So it was good. I just threw this quick little video together, mostly because I was looking on Twitter, sorry ads, and somebody posted something basically saying that the this Brookfield officer said that, oh, he'd never met with Carney. Oh, is that a fact?
My question is, when was the last time you communicated with the Prime Minister? And you're required to answer.
I'm happy to answer.
You obfuscated with your first response, sir, so I'm giving you the precision that you're required to answer the question, and it is directly when you last communicated with Mr. Carney.
Since he departed office, I have met with him only once.
And what was the nature of the meeting?
I contacted him to have a discussion about the rise in hate incidents, particularly anti-Semitism, across Canada.
And what was the date of the contact and the date of the meeting?
I contacted him a couple weeks before that, maybe more. The date of the meeting was Friday, October 3rd or 4th.
And did you meet in person or virtually?
I met in person with him. I took the afternoon off and I came to Ottawa on my own dime.
Okay. And did you meet with him here or in the Prime Minister's office on Wellington?
I believe it's the Prime Minister's office.
Okay. And is that in this building, or is that in, because he's got a couple. So is that in this building here, or is that the one down the street?
On the corner.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that was fun. It's just amazing that when people will just arbitrarily decide to produce misinformation, and if you're going to do that, at the very least, be better than a supermarket tabloid that is not unfamiliar with publishing outlandish stories because there's no video evidence to say otherwise. Right, so be more like a supermarket tabloid if you're going to be a quality Canadian journalism organization, by at least not printing lies if there's going to be evidence out there stating the obvious opposite. So let's make sure we got our screen up here and fade into it. All right. So Michael Barrett's X account, if you have an X account itself, he's got a lot of these videos sitting here. And of course, you can always find them just by selecting and finding the committee on the Parleview site. Now, I don't know about you, but last couple of days, especially over the weekend, I was trying to access a lot of these Parleview sites, and I kept getting a lot of server error issues. I've never had that problem before. Seems like everything under the Liberals seems to be turning into poop. Poop. All the time. Okay. Let's love it. Just look at a quick picture of 3I Atlas, just because. And it's in our solar system. And it has nothing to do with the far left evil that is besetting our land, but hey, it's not often that you got an intergalactic visitor coming through our solar system.
Tracker released a set of deep zoom images of 3I Atlas, and they are honestly very strange. Now, to start, these aren't single photos. They're 20-minute stacked exposures from an observer named Diego San Arrojo. Hopefully I said that right. But Space Tracker stabilized the frames, zoomed in 4,000%. They removed noise, corrected color, and averaged everything together. When you stack frames over 20 minutes, you reveal structures that are completely invisible in a single snapshot. And What it shows is a 4-point star, basically star-shaped luminous core surrounded by kind of a plasma-like haze. The symmetry is unusual, and the biggest surprise is that there's no obvious tail direction in this averaged composite, even though we know that the object has both dust and ion jets. So here's where the conversation gets a little interesting, and I'm going to call this kind of the woo-woo section. But it's worth talking about because, well, you'll see why. Just last week, Medium published an article called 3i Atlas Complex Jet Structured Angles Revealed. And in it, they traced out the potential jet geometry. The outline they mapped actually resembles a figure from a medieval artwork, specifically one of the little crafts in the fresco of the Crucifixion of Christ. People have also taken it a step further. Some are saying that this new 4,000% deep zoom image looks like Ezekiel's wheel from biblical descriptions. Again, these are visual parallels, not literal interpretations. But humans do compare unfamiliar things to old imagery to make sense of them. But I get why these comparisons are circulating. I mean,
So if you have not been aware of 3i Atlas, then you must have just crawled out of a cave recently. A digital cave, mind you. Move on to our next story. Ah, yes, the G20 has turned into a parade of state-approved WEF slogans, that's World Economic Forum, and socialist calls. Solidarity, equality, sustainability, airily very East German. Now, I don't know if this little poster that they put on their site is actually a real poster, a real image. But, you know, it does fit with all the ideology that they are espousing. And especially this guy here, right? Who cares? He has no urgency to call Donald Trump, as he said yesterday. Of course, we have a video for that, but I think we'll skip that because we're getting close to the question period. The members should be doing their statements. Yes, they are. Oh, David Bexley is doing a statement right now. Now, listen to this and we quickly realize how screwed we are under this government. Forest fires are called climate change, and Carney's more worried about carbon that was released than the people and businesses that were affected. He also says worrying about the climate will make your business more competitive, and they will force you to be part of the solution. And if you don't, you can bet banks will refuse to do business with you. This is the G-fans, and the grifter is one of the architects who will immensely get rich off of it. Now, environmental social governance, that's ESG, right? At the corporate level, that's what they impose. This is what their scheme has always been. If your corporation does not include ESG as part of its governance, well, then they don't get to do business with the government, right? Because that's the net zero deal that Mark Carney has brought in to make him and his friends and all his fund recipients rich, because only them have created this situation for them to get rich off of. Right? That's how he tore down the UK's economy by bringing in this garbage. And I don't know if the UK will ever dig themselves out of that hole. They've been far more taxed than we have here in Canada. Now, this fear porn, this constant climate change fear porn. Right? They've been doing this for a decade. They've been doing this for much longer than that, right? But they've really accelerated it. And now in this current budget, they have actually put money in to fund a climate youth corps. Right? So be these people here that their brains have been broken through fear in school. Instead of teaching them that life is okay, you're just a child. Wait till you're an adult, then you can start dealing with things. And in the meantime, we'll teach you the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But no. Here they are teaching these kids in school to be afraid. That's what we have in Canada now.
What's going to happen to the whole world if no one...
My honest review on this natural remedies book after having it for a month. Look at this blood sugar page.
No one does anything.
That poor little girl. I'm not picking on her. It's not her fault. Her parents should be sitting down with her and saying, you're going to be fine. But she's scared to death because money that you spend on this climate change thing scares little kids. And more of it is going to scare little kids. Did you hear what Mark Carney said yesterday to Elizabeth May? It just kind of floated by in his answer. Let me play more of what he said yesterday in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for advocacy of the Youth Climate Corps, which is in this budget.
This is from the same answer Mark Carney gave to Elizabeth May yesterday in the House of Commons. And I didn't catch it the first couple of times. I heard it. I caught it this morning when I was doing this video. A Youth Climate Corps is in the budget. Little liberal climate soldiers. Your money's going to this, no doubt, to go into schools and scare little kids like that one I just showed you about an imaginary problem. This is wrong. This is not what I expect from my tax dollars. And it's accomplishing nothing for the environment. It's an imaginary problem. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. Lenin. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. Writer H.L. Mencken. What are we getting for our money? It's unbelievable. And we committed to the Paris Climate Agreement even more yesterday. It's the reason we don't have nice things. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like,
That's John Bolton. If you're not subscribed to his channel, please do if you like his stuff. Very informative. The members are still doing their statements. Now, this is below the dignity of an honorable member of the House. We do not question the loyalty of fellow members. Oh, yeah? This is a really good line.
Always put his wealthy friends first. He will always put nations before Canada. His loyalty does not lie with Canada or with Canadians. He has told us in his own words exactly who he is. And when somebody tells you who they are, you should believe them. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Disloyal to Canada. This is what the Conservatives call a prime minister who is overseas right now working with our allies to secure trade deals. You know, when I hear from people in Winnipeg South Centre about the Prime Minister, here's what they tell me. He's a serious player. He's somebody who has a national and international reputation for getting things done. I have faith in him. He's an adult in the room. Contrast that with the leadership that we're seeing from the Leader of the Opposition and his members of Parliament, who instead are choosing to hurl childish insults, impugn motives, and actually question the loyalty of a person who is fighting hard for Canada every day.
So that's all they got, right? Is more name calling because they won't provide the facts. They won't provide any visibility. They're obscuring everything. Carney has lied from the start. They won't address the fact that he lied about his finances during the election. They won't talk about the fact that he lied about getting a trade deal. They won't talk about the fact that everything has gotten continually worse since April 28th and that they are just massively spending a bunch of money that is not helping the current situation in Canada whatsoever. Just like good fascists did back in the 1930s in Germany, right? Where they fundamentally spent a lot of the resources pushing their ideology while not really dealing with the material matters that were affecting the population at the time in order to continue this aspect, like John was talking about the constant being off put with the constant threat of hobgoblins. So him telling the story here of reinforcing, oh, our leader, he's the best guy, the opposite guy, he's a real loser. Just look at the mainstream media, our quality Canadian journalism organizations. If you listen to them, they're constantly going on about MAGA this, MAGA that. Oh, Pierre Poilievre is MAGA this, MAGA that. Oh, the Conservatives are MAGA this, MAGA that. And I hear this reflected back from people in society, right? The people that consume this media and believe it all the time. Because you try to engage them in any kind of conversation as to how horrible the liberals are and trying to get them to defend their policy. And they always seem to revert back, oh, you're just a mega supporter. Excuse me, we're trying to talk about Canadian politics here. I'm looking here, is Rochelle Danko doing a statement by members, or is she actually starting the question period? So about 4 minutes late. And it looks like it might actually be the question period. So let's bring that up. No, I guess not. I guess they're Looks like that is starting.
Mr. Speaker, in his 28 trips, this Prime Minister hasn't been able to reduce a single foreign tariff on Canada. But he has managed to find gains for Brookfield. A few days after he met with President Trump, the President signed an agreement to buy $80 billion worth of nuclear products from Brookfield. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is spending millions of dollars for a special project in Europe on the Brookfield campus. Why is it that every time the Prime Minister goes abroad, Canadians get poorer, but Brookfield, his business, gets richer? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président, comme d'habitude.
Mr. Speaker, as usual, the leader of the opposition should check his numbers. The government of Indonesia has reduced tariffs on Canadian goods on 95% of our goods and services. Meanwhile, the government of the UAE will invest $70 billion in our economy.
No, not the Right Honourable. The Leader of the Opposition. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Since the Prime Minister was elected promising, quote, to negotiate a win with the U.S., American tariffs on autos, aluminum, and steel have doubled, and on Canadian lumber, they've tripled. Not a single American tariff has been reduced since he promised he would reduce them. And now he says, who cares? Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I care about the 3,000 auto workers that I met on the picket line in Brampton who are out of a job. I care about the 8 mills that have closed because the Prime Minister failed to deliver a deal. The workers on those lines, they care. Canadians care. Why doesn't the Prime Minister care?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since I became Prime Minister, Canada has secured the lowest tariffs of any country in the world. On 85% of our goods, the tariffs are zero. Yes, Mr. Speaker, there are sectors, the auto sector, the steel sector, the lumber sector, the aluminum sector, that are under pressure. We care. We're acting in those sectors. There will be announcements this week to further support.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Before the election, he promised elbows up. After, it was who cares? Yeah. Before the election, he said the tariffs were an existential crisis. Now he says they're not a burning issue. Before the election, he promised to negotiate a win. After, he backed down to American tariffs, and those tariffs have now doubled on Canadian aluminum, autos, and steel, and tripled on Canadian lumber. Before the election, he promised the fastest growing economy in the G7. After, he delivered the fastest shrinking economy. Why is the Prime Minister before the election
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on the night of the election, when I had the great honour from my constituents of being elected as a deputy of this House, unlike some others in the chamber today, I made a promise to Canadians. When I make a mistake, I'll admit it. That was a poor choice of words about a serious issue. And the serious issue is what progress are we making structurally? Look, best deal in the world, strongest budget in the world, and the most new trade deals in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did make a mistake. He's made many mistakes. In fact, it's been nothing but mistakes when it's come to trade. Look at it. This Prime Minister promised that he would negotiate a win on softwood lumber. Now he says, who cares? Well, Conservatives cared. Within 80 days of the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, taking office, he managed to eliminate American tariffs on softwood lumber and get refunds of them. This Prime Minister has now had 8 months, and those tariffs have now more than tripled. Prime Minister asks, who cares? I can tell you, on behalf of all the MPs on this side, we care about the jobs that are being lost in Lumbertown. Why doesn't he?
The Right Honourable
Mr. Speaker, this government cares about creating jobs in this country. That's why we proposed a budget before this House that catalyzes $1 trillion of investment over 5 years. The member opposite and his colleagues, those who could make it into the room, voted against that budget, voted against Canadian workers, voted against Canada's future. We believe in this country, Mr. Speaker, and we are building it.
Bravo. Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Chinese, American, Indian, and other tariffs have only gone up since the Prime Minister began his 28-trip journey around the world. He hasn't had a single solitary win. In fact, the only wins he's had are for Brookfield. Just days after he met with the President, Trump signed on to $80 billion of nuclear purchases from Brookfield. And then he gave $500 million of our tax money to the European Space Agency located on Brookfield's campus. Why is it that whenever he spends his time and our money, Canadians end up poor and he and Brookfield end up richer?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, not for the first time, the Leader of the Opposition needs to check his numbers. That's right. The government of Indonesia is reducing tariffs on 95% of Canadian goods. Wow. Canada has the best deal with the United States. 85% of our goods are tariff-free. Wow. The United Arab Emirates is just confirmed that they want to invest $70 billion in this country. Wow. They believe in Canada's future. Why don't the members up?
It's always good to fact check and give her my echo. Good fact check in real time. When he's saying 85% is free trade free, well, it was always 85%. Even before April, it was always 85% was tariff free. Right? So he's always assuming things that he's never done for Canada, saying, "Oh, we have the best trade deal. We have no trade deal. We have had no trade deal." Between China and Canada, I think we're combating each other for the top less trade deal and more tariffs from the U.S. than any other, because every other country on the planet got a deal with the U.S. Right? Not Canada. No, not Canada. Oh, we got the best trade deal ever. Don't be fooled. It's a lie.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Right, and he arrived just a few days after Brookfield's CEO lining up with the same interests that are not Canadian interests, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of Canadian interests, this Prime Minister opposed the pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, just like his Liberal predecessor blocked that same pipeline. On Thursday, he'll make one of his grand announcements, waving around a meaningless so-called Memorandum of Understanding. If it's anything other than a public relations ploy, why won't he say, on what date will construction begin on a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sometimes the question reveals everything. The Memorandum of Understanding that we're negotiating with Alberta creates necessary conditions, but not sufficient conditions, because we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. We believe that First Nations right holders in this country have to agree and support. All stakeholders have to back. That's one Canada.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals always cheat. We're just going to wait for things to calm down so that we can hear the Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Please go ahead. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals always cheat. We found that out in 1995, and we see it now. The Minister of Immigration at the time confirmed that Jean Chrétien asked him to speed up giving citizenship to as many people as possible so they could vote in the referendum, and the Liberals have admitted that they leveraged immigration during that vote. Last month, Jean Chrétien also admitted that if Quebecers had voted yes, he would have used a whole bunch of low tricks to avoid having to recognize the new reality. Liberals always cheat, and if Quebec holds a new referendum, will they cheat again? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Yes, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, I would say that with 45 Quebec Liberal members here, it's pretty clear that we respect the vote of Quebecers. The Bloc Québécois is always criticizing Quebec members, and meanwhile, we are building this great country. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, the Liberals cheated during the referendum, whereas the Yes camp was democratic. The proof of that is how Quebecers nobly accepted the results of the referendum, but they accepted it because they felt that it was a democratic process, but actually that democratic process had been undermined by the Liberals. They rigged the results, and Jean Chrétien was even prepared to cheat if the Yes camp had won. With a third referendum on the horizon, will the Federalists finally debate democratically instead of using cheating and scary stories? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is turned toward the past, but this government is turned toward the future with confidence, boldness, and ambition for Quebec and Canada.
L'honorable député du Lac-Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, a lot of people have to wait for years to be granted citizenship, while Ottawa twiddles its thumbs. But now we know what the Liberals are up to. We know that if there were just a referendum in Quebec, Ottawa would suddenly take action. Imagine the conversation. Oh, you want us to process your file more quickly? Okay, great. But you will vote against the referendum to thank the good old Canadian government. How is it that Canada's immigration system is always broken except when there's an opportunity to harm Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, the Bloc Québécois is trying to scare us. Canada attracts the best people in the world. And all Canadians and Quebecers want to build this great country with our government.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister apparently hasn't read our Constitution, which indicates that the federal government alone has jurisdiction over pipelines that cross borders. Let me quote 9210. Federal jurisdiction applies to works and undertakings that connect one province to another or extend beyond provincial limits. In other words, it is exclusively the federal government's decision on whether to approve a pipeline. It was this federal government that blocked the last pipeline. So can he confirm, once and for all, is he deciding unilaterally to give veto to NDP BC Premier to block a project that Canada needs?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, last week we talked about that big, long, giant pipeline of hot air that animated the country for 10 years during the government of which that member was a member. Not a single milliliter of oil reached Tidewater under the Harper era. In a Liberal government, oil exports have increased. Oil exports to Tidewater, thanks to the purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, have increased. Canada is a conventional and a renewable energy superpower, and that will continue.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So the this trans line, oil line that he's talking about, trans-border pipeline, that was already approved and almost completed because of the Conservatives. And along come the Liberals and decide to fuck the deal up because private industry was going to pay for it. And then we ended up paying for it, 5, 10 more times than what it actually was supposed to cost because, of course, the Liberals got into it and meddled it. Right? But now it's theirs to own. What he's saying, we completed this project. Of course, leaving out all the other facts, like this clown McKinnon always does in Parliament, because he's like a rug. He lies all the time.
Mr. Speaker, it really is embarrassing that a prime minister who claimed that he was the man with the plan cannot even stand up and debate me about pipelines on the floor of the House of Commons. He's afraid. He's afraid to have to do it. The previous Conservative government approved a pipeline to Tidewaters, the Northern Gateway pipeline, which the Liberals then defeated and destroyed, giving massive power to the Americans to monopolize our oil. Will the Prime Minister, who promised to act with unimaginable speed 8 months ago, finally stand up for Canadian workers and confirm that he will approve a pipe to the top? The
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, our government fully understands the ultimate jurisdiction for interprovincial pipelines rests with the federal government. At the same time, our government has been clear that a proponent for a major project, for it to be designated, we expect it to work with the impacted jurisdictions and with First Nations. Mr. Speaker, they don't understand that. The Premier of Alberta understands that. They want to work with us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it really is pathetic that the Prime Minister cannot stand in his place and defend his position. He's afraid to defend the fact that on Thursday, he will not sign on to a new pipeline. He will sign on to a public relations stunt while planning to hide behind the Premier of BC and abdicating his unique constitutional responsibilities. If he wanted a pipeline, if he no longer believed in the keep it in the ground extremist ideology that he supported for 10 years, then he would stand up today and say that he will approve a pipe to the Pacific. Will he?
Yet to answer the question. I'm waiting for it to get a little quieter. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition doesn't seem to understand how to get a pipeline built. The Premier of Alberta does. It's working with this government to build Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
Of the Opposition.
Speaker, the question was for the Prime Minister. He's here in Ottawa today. He has the ability to stand up and state his position. He claimed that he was going to act with unimaginable speed. Here we are 8 months later, and he refuses to state whether he even supports a new oil pipeline or whether he'd like to continue to pump that oil at discounts to the United States of America while Canadians pay the price. What does it take to get a pipeline approved by this Prime Minister? Does it have to be a Brookfield pipeline?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, natural resources projects, interprovincial resource projects, there are indeed a great deal of those. The federal government has a unique role and must ensure that our obligations to First Nations, our obligations to other provinces, to communities, to consulting are present and those conditions are met, and then we are able to proceed. The Leader of the Opposition, now that he's standing right there, may want to stand up and say, what part of that process would he not respect, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I don't respect the idea of standing in the way of Canadian energy workers and giving our oil to the Americans at a discount. What we would do is get the government out of the way and get the project built. The Prime Minister has the unique constitutional opportunity to do that. Section 9210 of the BNA Act makes it exclusively a federal decision. This Prime Minister is hiding under his desk rather than answering the question. 8 months after promising that he would take unprecedented action with unimaginable speed, he's done nothing. Why doesn't he get out of the way?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Nonsense. We have dozens of major projects in play and under study, and we are building the country at unimaginable speed. We are creating opportunities for energy workers, for young people, for housing, for steel, lumber, aluminum, and autos in this country. That is what we are doing. What is shocking is that the leader of the opposition stands in his place and somehow pretends in his whole fake way that he's going to override and steamroll the rights of Canadians that have a right to have a say in these projects. We're going to give them a say. He won't.
The honourable leader of the opposition.
While the Prime Minister hides under his desk, he puts up his House leader to rant and rave and pump his fists in the air. This Prime Minister said that we faced an existential crisis requiring that we act with unimaginable speed. And here we are, 8 months later, and he doesn't even have the courage to tell Canadians whether he supports a pipeline that would allow us to go around the American monopoly of our energy and get our product to the world. So will he finally stand up for workers, stand up in this House, and answer the question, a pipeline or a pipe dream?
Mr. Speaker, speaking of ranting and raving, I asked the leader of the opposition yesterday. Two significant things were said by members of his caucus last week. Number one, the member for Calgary Midnapore suggested the Prime Minister was disloyal to Canada. Secondly, the member for Northern Rockies repeated mega claims that immigrants were the cause of economic slowdown in Canada. He should stand in his place right now and apologize for those comments. Take those members to task and do something for
I can't imagine what we have in store for Wednesday. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's not us that question the loyalty of the Prime Minister. He's the one that is blocking a pipeline that would allow Canada to become energy independent, to reach markets outside of Canada, while he and his company invest in pipelines in the Middle East and in Latin America. He's the one that forces Canadians to spend more on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined, while he stashes his cash in a Bermuda tax haven above a bicycle shop. So if he wants to say that he's Canada first, why doesn't he stand up in this House and start acting like it?
The honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
The Building Trades Union, the Canadian Labour Congress.
He's too busy checking his shares. They've gone up.
Does the honourable member have a question?
Yeah.
The honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, the Building Trades Union, the Canadian Labour Congress, the Leona Union, Mr. Speaker. These are all unions that have praised Budget 2025. And you know why, Mr. Speaker? Because they make historic investments in the major infrastructure projects that are going to create great jobs all across this country. Whether it's supporting Canadians through things like the Canada Child Benefit, indexing it to inflation, whether it's creating jobs and helping people get the skills to take them. Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives vote against Canadians every single time. Canadians know better.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, it's official. Canada is giving up on fighting climate change. The Prime Minister will announce it Thursday with a whole new dirty pipeline to the West Coast. Another one after Trans Mountain, which cost people $34 billion. And that's not even counting climate adaptation costs. A new pipeline, which thanks to C5 and C15, I will have to interrupt the member. Although the member is a bit far away from me, I have a speaker here, and yet even with the speaker, I couldn't hear him. I would like to ask the member for Repentigny to start over from the beginning. Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister doesn't want to hear this question, but it's official. Canada has given up on the fight against climate change. We'll see that Thursday when a new dirty pipeline will be announced, another one. We already have Trans Mountain, which costs Canadian citizens $34 billion, and that's not counting climate adaptation costs. This is a dark day. Dark, just like the dirty oil that the Liberals are wallowing in. This government clearly has no green convictions left. The Honourable Minister for Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, our government is committed to fighting climate change every day. If my colleague wants to talk about major projects, well, I would like to talk about the Iqaluit hydroelectric project, which will enable northern communities to have clean energy. That's important both for people's health and for the environment. Or what about high-speed rail, which is good for our communities? We are doing the work, and we are fighting climate change every day. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, on May 14th, the Minister of Heritage stated that this is not the right time for new pipelines. But clearly for his party, it's always a good time. Because now, in addition to Trans Mountain, we have a second dirty pipeline to the West Coast. We remember the years of Stephen Harper as being bad years for the environment. But Stephen Harper never approved a single pipeline, whereas these Liberals will have approved 2 new pipelines. And that includes the Minister of Heritage. How is he still part of that party? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, it is quite remarkable to hear members of the Bloc Québécois today when we have created a generational budget which invests in infrastructure, in national corridors, which will enable us to create clean energy projects throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. If I were in the Bloc Québécois, I would be standing up to applaud Budget 2025. But instead, they hid away on the day of the budget. They will have to explain to Quebecers why they are voting against green projects throughout the country. On this side of the House, we will always be there to build Canada strong. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, just like 30 years ago, the Liberals want to hand out citizenship to just about anyone. In Bill C-12, the Liberals are giving themselves the authority to change temporary resident visa to create permanent visas. They've stated that they could cancel or vary permanent or temporary resident visas, work and study permits, electronic travel authorizations, and other documents. Liberals want to speed up the process to access citizenship. Are they doing that in the interest of Canada or of the Liberal Party? The Honourable Minister of Citizenship, Refugees and Immigration. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This government is focusing on the future. We will reduce temporary residences. We will prioritize economic immigration, and we will also grow Francophone communities. I hope that the Bloc Québécois and the Conservatives will support us in that. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the Minister will read her own bill so that she understands what she's doing. Mr. Speaker, at the G20 summit recently, when this Prime Minister was asked whether he would be speaking to the American President, he said, "Who cares?" which in French is, "Who cares?" And now we understand that that's because, well, this morning, Brookfield's chief operating officer stated at a committee that 95% of Brookfield's the big businesses that Brookfield holds are not going to be under the ethics review, which means that the Prime Minister will personally benefit from at least 1,900 businesses. And now we know why he doesn't care about these 3,800 employees in the aluminum sector. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives keep repeating these empty, completely hollow allegations without a shred of truth to them. It's shocking to hear from my veteran colleague. As he knows perfectly well, we have one of the strictest ethics codes in the entire world, which the Prime Minister is following to the letter.
The Honourable Member for York York-Durham.
The Prime Minister was elected on a promise to negotiate a win, a good deal with the United States. But when asked about it on the weekend, he said, who cares? It's just a detail, and that he would speak with the President when it matters. From negotiate a win to who cares in a matter of months. Who cares about our most important trading relationship? Canadians care. Ontario's auto industry is more than just a detail. It matters to the thousands of workers in York and Durham regions, and it matters now. Well, the Prime Minister explained to Ontario's auto workers why he said, who cares?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Mr. Speaker, as we said yesterday, just because our colleague keeps repeating the same inaccurate phrase doesn't make it real. The Prime Minister has said that our government will always stand up for workers in the auto sector, in the steel sector, in the aluminum sector, in the forestry sector. Unlike the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, our government isn't going to sign just any old deal. We're going to sign a deal that's in the interest of Canadian workers and the Canadian economy, and we're going to continue to support those sectors as we go through these difficult times.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Kenora-Kiiwetinoong.
The Prime Minister proclaimed himself the so-called master negotiator when it came to dealing with the Americans, Mr. Speaker. He promised to negotiate a win by July 21st. Now, months after failing to do so, he says, who cares? Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you who cares. Conservatives care, and the workers, the sawmill workers in Ear Falls, hundreds of which who have lost their jobs, they care, Mr. Speaker. So will the Prime Minister look at those workers and tell them who cares?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we care about the forestry industry. That's why we've announced $1.2 billion in support for the industry. That's why we're meeting almost every day with the industries, as recently as last night, Mr. Speaker. And we have good news for the opposition. There will be new supports coming this week for the forestry product sector.
The Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, this Prime Minister said he would be elbows up when dealing with the existential crisis of Trump's tariffs. Now, months after failing to negotiate a win, he's saying, who cares? Well, I'll tell you who cares. Conservatives care, and so do the 1,200 steel workers at Interpro Pipe and Steel in Regina, whose jobs are under threat because of this trade war. How can the Prime Minister look the 1,200 steel workers at Interpro Pipe and Steel in the eyes and tell them who cares?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, our colleagues keep repeating phrases that they know are not accurate. What is accurate, Mr. Speaker, is our government has always supported the hardworking women and men who work in our steel sector in every corner of the country. We've put in place unprecedented support measures. We're prepared to continue to do more. The Prime Minister met with industry leaders in this sector last week. Mr. Speaker, we'll always stand up for the hardworking women and men in our steel sector and other sectors of the Canadian economy.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Milton East, Halton Hills South.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to see real results, new jobs, new opportunities, and growth that supports families and businesses in communities like mine in Milton and Georgetown. This past week, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs were in the UAE and South Africa, making deals, securing those opportunities, and showcasing the best of what Canada has to offer. Could the Minister of Foreign Affairs update the House on how Canada is leveraging our strengths to deliver real benefits to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for her question. Everywhere I go, people say they want more Canada. And last week, the Prime Minister confirmed the largest foreign investment commitment in Canadian history at $70 million. In addition, we have launched trade negotiations with India for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, Mr. Speaker. We are building the strongest economy in the G7 by unlocking generational investments. Vive la Canada!
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
3 years ago, the Finance Minister promised Canadians he would stabilize food prices by Thanksgiving.
Well, 3 pumpkin pies have come and gone, and food inflation is 50% higher than target. What could possibly have gone wrong when the finance minister promised tools like the Grocery Code of Conduct would lower grocery prices? Well, every single expert at the Agriculture Committee, including the president of the Grocery Code, said it was never designed to lower food prices. So will the Minister of Finance please stand and explain to Canadians why he promised the code would lower food prices when he knew it would do no such thing?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Let's talk about something other than imaginary taxes, shall we? While the Conservatives hammer away on taxes that aren't real, we are actually helping Canadians with the cost of living. Every year, Mr. Speaker, for example, the Canada Child Benefit Old Age Security is indexed to inflation. And what happens every year, Mr. Speaker? Every year, these Conservatives vote against those increases that actually help Canadians keep up with the price of living. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let me just quote the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois. He said, every year when we write Canada's food price report, climate change is the #1 wild card factor.
The Honourable Member for Foothill.
Well, the fact is, Mr. Speaker, food prices are rising because this Liberal government is the most expensive in Canadian history. And every time the Prime Minister sticks his hand in the pockets of Canadians, he drives up the price of everything. And we are seeing, with their own imaginary taxes, like the fuel tax and an increase to the industrial carbon tax, are making everything more expensive, driving up the cost to grow the food, move the food, and buy the food. This is at a time when food inflation in Canada is 40% higher than it is in the United States. Why is the Prime Minister so intent to force Canadians to food banks by increasing his taxes on food and fuel?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, if that leader, that member, and that party actually cared about making life more affordable for Canadians, they wouldn't have voted against automatic federal benefits, getting 5.5 million Canadians benefits that otherwise would be left unclaimed. Benefits like the Canada Child Benefit, the Disability Tax Credit, the Canada Workers Benefit. The only thing that leader cares about is keeping his job, his dismal poll numbers, and quashing a caucus revolt. We care about Canadians, and we will deliver for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Well, it's clear that families across the country are struggling to afford even the most basic necessities. Under this Liberal government, many Canadians have been stripped of the basic dignity of being able to provide for themselves. Since 2017, for example, the price of baby formula has gone up by 84%, leaving parents so desperate that it's actually now the #1 item taken from grocery store shelves. Yesterday, the Secretary of State for Children and Youth said or suggested that hungry infants should in fact enroll in the Liberal school food program. Wow. So I'm just curious, do Liberals understand that babies don't go to school?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, we all want the best solution to drive down the price of food, and that's why we're working on real facts. My colleague mentioned the Agriculture Committee. Well, let me quote you the VP of Costco and other grocers, but he said, and I quote, "What drives the price of food? The first item is the commodity itself. With a bad crop, the price goes up. With a good crop, the price goes down. It has nothing to do with any policy, Mr. Speaker. We want solution. In order to drive down the price of food, we have to support our farmer with climate resilience, Mr. Speaker."
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
So I guess the answer is yes, then. Liberals believe that babies should just go and enroll in a school food program that they offer. It's ludicrous that Liberals are referring hungry babies to a school food program. It's outrageous that in a country like Canada, parents are having to make the decision between paying their bills and being able to afford the basic necessities of life for a baby. This is literally life and death, and these Liberals stand over there and shrug their shoulders. When will the Prime Minister stop his inflationary spending and make life affordable for Canadians again?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we understand that any parent struggling to feed their child is one parent too many. My colleague opposite knows that Canada has historically relied on imports of baby formula, which means Canadians have been impacted by external pressures. As a country, we do have to move from reliance to resilience, and I would also point out that the Canada Child Benefit, which members opposite continue to vote against in budget after budget, puts up to $8,000 tax-free in the pockets of parents. This will help with the cost of baby formula. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Nobinière. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government is the costliest in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes directly out of Canadians' pockets. The government allowed the National Research Council of Canada to spend over $60,000 of public money on patio furniture at a time when people are struggling to put food on the table. Mr. Speaker, everyone likes to soak up some sun, but the government should not be doing so at the expense of taxpayers. When will this Liberal government stop throwing money out the window and onto patios?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Nous attendons de toutes les organisations gouvernementales.
We expect that all government or organizations follow the required procurement process. Our government evaluates all organizations and assesses possible savings. Meanwhile, I know that the Research Council does a lot of important work for Canada and its growth. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, food prices have risen nearly 40% faster in Canada than in the United States, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who the Liberals want to dismiss in the near future. Hidden taxes will drive up gas prices by up to 17 cents a litre. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals could have brought down food costs for Canadian households. Why is the Prime Minister sticking with a hidden tax of 17 cents a litre on fuel, which makes food even more expensive? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Mr. Speaker, we are looking for solutions to bring down food prices. But you know, Mr. Speaker, real solutions are based on real facts. Last week at the agriculture community, we heard from the Costco CEO, and he told us that what drives up food prices is the impact of climate variations on harvests. When it's a good year or a good harvest, food prices will go down, but if it's a bad year, prices will go up.
For Newmarket, Aurora.
This Liberal government is the most expensive in Canadian history. A father in Newmarket who is an engineer said to me, "We cannot cover the living costs. I can only pay for the mortgage, utilities and taxes. Food, transportation and insurance, well, that's out of pocket." And while Canadians struggle, the Liberals keep up punishing fuel tax that adds up to 17 cents more per litre at the pumps, hiking the cost of parents driving to work, of the farmers and the truckers who bring the food to our shelves. So why is this Prime Minister clinging to this fuel tax and doubling down on reckless inflationary spending?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Instead of the members opposite focusing on fake taxes, rather, they should support things that actually put a few bucks extra in the pockets of hardworking Canadians. You know, as a former single mother and a person who lived paycheck to paycheck for most of my life, I can tell you that what helps parents, what helps families, is having money in our pockets. And so when we index things like the Canada Child Benefit to inflation, that puts money in the pockets of Canadians. They can then use it to buy the things they need. It's pretty simple, Mr. Speaker, but it's really hard for these Conservatives to understand.
It's insane that this retarded socialist insists on continuing this lie of putting money in people's pockets while ignoring that they are taking it out of everybody's pockets to give it back to them in their pockets while skimming off 99% of it for themselves and their rich friends. They're not fooling anybody, except, of course, for the Elbozos.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Fake, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals say that the cost pressures on Canadians are fake. Here's another note from someone else in Newmarket. As the cost of living increases and our salaries don't, we are being driven into poverty. 4 out of 5 Canadians list food as their #1 worry.
when paying their bills. Food. And Statistics Canada confirms that beef is up 17%, baby formula 6%, coffee up 34%. That is not fake. They should knock on some doors and get a reality check from the people they claim to represent. The Liberals dismiss the struggles of Canadians, but I ask, why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it really seems to me like the member opposite missed her chance to vote for a tax cut that would have benefited 22 million Canadians, including members in her riding. Now, just this morning, she spoke about engineers. Mr. Speaker, just this morning, I met with the International Union of Operating Engineers. There are 18,000 here in Ontario. You know what we talked about? We talked about the importance of early learning and child care, because they need that not only to recruit and train new engineers, but to benefit the families who depend on it for affordable child care so they can go to work.
Hear, hear. Honourable member for Simcoe North.
It has been reported that the government is considering lifting the tanker ban to support an east-west oil pipeline. The problem is some Liberal MPs and even cabinet ministers don't support this proposal. So, Mr. Speaker, who speaks for the government? Will the minister finally clear it up today that the government is going to do what Conservatives have called for all along, scrap the emissions cap and lift the tanker ban so Canadian resources can get to market?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we're going to do what we need to do, which is build Canada strong. The Prime Minister has been clear. Major projects will only proceed with rigorous environmental assessments and clear contributions to Canada's climate change objectives.
The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is Economic Violence Awareness Day. The day is a Canadian initiative that is now observed around the world. Economic violence, such as restricting access to money, sabotaging employment, or forcing someone into debt, is a common form of gender-based violence. Economic violence robs people of their autonomy and limits their ability to lead a stable and fulfilling life. I am proud to have voted in favour of a budget with measures to combat economic violence. Could the Minister of Finance remind those who voted against the budget of what exactly they opposed? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for her excellent question and for her leadership on this file. Preventing economic violence means guaranteeing access to information and financial resources. Good news, and the Conservatives should be happy about this. In Budget 2025, we announced our intention to develop a voluntary code of conduct for the prevention of economic violence. In order to do so, we will collaborate with the Canadian financial sector, because the sector plays a role in early detection of violence. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, some members voted against the budget in this place, but we should all support the fight against economic violence.
Canadians need to know that every decision the Prime Minister makes is in the national interest and not in his own financial interest. Yesterday at committee, Brookfield confirmed that every time Brookfield makes money, this Prime Minister makes money, and that 1,900 companies that Brookfield owns are not covered by this Prime Minister's ethics screen. Wow. Every time he goes down to the White House, he doesn't come back with a deal for Canadians, but the last time he went, he did get a $80 billion deal for Brookfield. So will the Prime Minister just give Canadians the confidence they deserve and sell his financial interest in Brookfield?
The Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition should stop the conspiracy theories. They should get out more, stop saying no, and find out who's saying yes to Canada. They don't even have to go far. Just this morning, I was in Canada where Nokia said yes to Canada and the Ottawa-Gatineau area, and they broke ground in a $340 million innovation center. They employed 2,600 Canadians. They will employ 340 more. They should do what Nokia does. Build in Canada, buy in Canada, believe in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
It must be concerning for the minister that the clerk of the Privy Council believed in the same conspiracy so much that he sold his shares in Brookfield knowing that he couldn't manage the conflict of interest in the role that he had. The same conflict that this Prime Minister has. And he's supposed to be managing this Prime Minister's conflicts. Every time Brookfield makes money, this Prime Minister is making money. Even the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield itself admits this very thing. With 1,900 companies that Brookfield owns not covered by this Prime Minister's ethics screen, why won't he just do the thing that Canadians need, give them the confidence that they deserve, and sell his shares in Brookfield?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of deals, last week it was Germany investing $1 billion in Canadian defense technology. A few days ago it was the Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates securing $70 billion for our industries here. And just today in Ottawa, Finnish Nokia investing $340 billion, supporting thousands of jobs, exporting to over 115 countries, Mr. Speaker. The world is calling and we are answering.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's conflicts with Brookfield are everywhere. Yesterday, the COO of Brookfield said that when Brookfield does well, the Prime Minister does well. So is it any wonder that this government is helping Brookfield do well, including fast-tracking a Brookfield-owned LNG project and handing $500 million to a foreign space agency partnered with Brookfield? Why won't the Prime Minister end his conflicts and fully divest himself from Brookfield?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, conspiracy theories, imaginary taxes, all a different way to say no to Canada. This is a party that says yes. And guess what? Just today, Nokia said yes to Canada. They invested $340 million in an innovation center. Those are good jobs, Mr. Speaker. 2,600 jobs in Canada, 340 more good jobs. They broke ground today. Why, Mr. Speaker? They're building in Canada, buying in Canada, and believing in Canada, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg West.
Mr. Speaker, on November 12th, we saw the Build Canada Homes program accelerate affordable housing projects across the country, including a major announcement at Innuendo'd in Winnipeg. Approximately 320 new homes, 40% of them below market and developed in partnership with Treaty 1 First Nations, are now set to move forward. This is exactly the kind of progress my constituents in Winnipeg West are looking for. Could the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure update the House on how these Build Canada Homes projects in Winnipeg and other cities will help deliver affordable homes more quickly?
Absolutely. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Winnipeg West for his great question. Our government is making generational investments in building the homes that Canadians need right now. And this month, Build Canada Homes took a major step in the redevelopment of sites in accelerating affordable housing in Winnipeg, in Ottawa, and in Edmonton. This will add nearly 1,800 affordable homes across Canada, the housing that Canadians need. And will the Conservatives in the meantime support the first-time homebuyers tax? They're stalling it here, preventing first-time homebuyers from accessing $50,000 savings.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency, Charlevoix. When Brookfield makes money, the Prime Minister makes money. Those aren't our words. Those are the words of Brookfield's Chief Operating Officer. That's what he told us in committee yesterday. And if that wasn't bad enough, we found out that 95% of businesses owned by Brookfield are not even covered in the Prime Minister's ethics screen. And the people who are supposed to oversee the ethics screen don't even have access to the full list of businesses. Mr. Speaker, can someone explain to us why Brookfield's interests seem to perfectly align with the Liberal budget tabled last week? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, our friends across the way are continuing to enjoy being a bit conspiracist. Now, as the member likely knows full well, the Code of Ethics, which MPs and parliamentarians must abide by, is thorough, and the Prime Minister must follow that code of conduct and ethics.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the government is letting Canadian Airlines violate the human rights of people with disabilities. This time, it's WestJet, who put in place arbitrary weight restrictions, preventing people with motor vehicles from flying. The result? Denying people with disabilities the right to travel safely for work, education, or to visit loved ones. When will the Liberals close loopholes in the Accessible Canada Act, uphold disability rights, and hold corporate executives accountable when they violate these rights?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we have an ongoing dialogue with Canada's transportation companies about ensuring the mark of a great society is the space and the ability for all members of that society to participate in it. And we obviously want the transportation sector to be very reflective of that great generosity in Canada. We have a proud record on this side of the House and renewing and reaffirming our commitment to accessibility in Canada. We'll continue to do that, and we'll do that in partnership with the transportation sector.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, Danielle Smith is making an unprecedented attack on healthcare in this country. If she is allowed to get away with privatization, it will be the beginning of the end of public, universal, single-payer healthcare in this country. And it is central to Canadian identity. And Alberta healthcare workers are calling for the government to protect healthcare, to enforce the Canada Healthcare Act. Will the Prime Minister protect public healthcare and enforce the law in this country, or will he just take a photo op with Daniel?
L'Honorable Ministre de la Santé.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, our new government will always protect the Canada Health Act and Canada's universal healthcare system. That's why Budget 2025, our new government is investing in our publicly funded healthcare system, including through generational investments of $5 billion to build healthcare infrastructures. We have a collaborative approach with all provinces and territories to ensure all Canadians continue to have an equitable access to medically necessary care based on their medical needs, not their ability to pay. Thank you.
And that concludes question period for today. I know you're disappointed, but it'll be back tomorrow. Je désire informer.
I would like to inform the House that the volume of earpieces will...
No points of order today, and no special guest up in the gallery to present. Well, that was interesting. Not too many mentions of the Who Cares, which was dominating yesterday's question period. And of course, it's here we go again with the Liberals asking questions of the opposition. The entire reason for question period is for the members of the opposition, the members who are not in government, to ask the government questions. There was something that somebody else had mentioned I was listening to early today, and I'd seen it, and I've been loosely talking about it on this stream in past episodes. And that is how what has happened to question period has gone completely pear-shaped over the years, and of course accelerated under this very unliberal liberal government. Because in the past, if you looked even under Jean Chrétien's liberal government at the time, when they would ask a question to the Liberal Party, they would actually try to answer the question, right? But now they never answer anything. They just have a series of talking points that they will espouse, or they will accuse the opposition of not supporting them and being against Canadians and continuing their fear porn campaign against the opposition, of course, which they're paying the quality Canadian journalism organizations to proliferate through the media in Canadian society as well. But they're not answering questions. They're constantly attacking. And now it's gotten to the point where they're now asking the opposition questions during question period. And what's the speaker doing about it? Oh, he's doing nothing. He's having a little glass of water right now. But what's the speaker doing about it? Well, he's maintaining orders as as well as he can. And I got to tell you, over the time, watching the different speakers of the House, the laissez-faire attitude that this speaker has in managing the daily affairs in the House is probably the best approach compared to others who try to control too many things. Now, of course, he's subjected to the rules of the Green Book, and there's probably nothing in the Green Book. I'll probably have to go and have a look myself that says the question period can only have questions asked by the opposition. Of course, there's nothing in the Green Book that says the government has to answer, because in most effect, even when they do provide an answer, it's a no answer, which is why we call this the no answer period. Well, before we go on our way out, I will show you a quick little video on yesterday's Who Cares? And we will follow that with another version of the intro for a new channel that will be starting up on the weekend. And after that, we will do our outro, which is the same as the intro for this channel. And then we will see you tomorrow. Thanks all for coming out. I really appreciate it. And if you've left some comments, you will be sure to get an answer if you're watching this on repeat. And for those of you who are here, the chat is still up for now. And we'll be signing that off closely once the stream is done. Thank you all for coming out. Bye-bye. And let me get into that supplement. No?
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It's always a good day to be Brookfield, the Prime Minister's former company under this Liberal government. The latest treat, a $500 million contract for the European Space Agency to create good-paying jobs in Europe. But it gets better. The 50% of the campus, the Harwell campus, where the European Space Agency is located, is owned by Brookfield. And let's not forget, Brookfield is Canada's #1 tax dodger. Through various shell corporations in the Caribbean, they avoided paying $6.5 billion in taxes. Meanwhile, 2.2 million Canadians line up at food banks every single month, and the unemployment rate is 6.9%. This government's answer? Let's make Brookfield richer. Well, I can tell you this. Conservatives will not stop. Every single day we will expose this kind of corruption, and every single day we will fight to make sure it stops.
States, he repeats the same promise that the Prime Minister has been breaking for the last 8 months. He said he would have a deal by July 21st, no deal. He said he'd negotiate a win, no win. He said he wouldn't back down, all he's done is back down. He said he'd be elbows up, his elbows are missing, and now when he's asked about the fate of these thousands of jobs that rely on him keeping his word, he says, who cares? Isn't it clear by now that even days after he met the president, only Brookfield got the $80 billion deal? Is that what he meant when he promised he'd negotiate a win?
Right.
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, we care so much that...
On va recommencer là parce qu'on entend.
Let's start over. I can't hear anything. Let's just take a moment here. We'll let people calm down. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's only Monday. Look at how excited they are because they know there's good news in the budget, Mr. Speaker. That's what I see. Mr. Speaker, there's enough good news to go to Regina, to go to Winnipeg, to go to Moose Jaw, because you know what, Mr. Speaker? The people in Winnipeg understand you need to invest in infrastructure. The people in Moose Jaw understand you need to invest in our military. The people in Regina understand we need to invest in housing, Mr. Speaker. Canadians understand that we need to invest in this country. On this side of this house, we will always fight for Canadians because every day is a good day to fight for Canadians.
The Prime Minister claimed during the last election that the U.S. tariffs were an existential crisis, and I quote, requiring that he immediately be elected to, quote, negotiate a win and get a deal by July 21st. Well, a few days ago, he was asked about the state of those negotiations, and he said there are no issues of importance to discuss. In fact, he said, who cares? Mr. Speaker, we care. We care about the workers who've lost their jobs and don't have paychecks to make their mortgage payments. Why doesn't he care?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Monsieur le Président, on trouve un peu que ça dérape.
Mr. Speaker, things are getting out of hand on the other side of the House.
Repeating of these mega claims came in the wake of the member for Calgary Midnapore questioning the Prime Minister's loyalty to Canada. I think we can all agree that those are comments that no Canadian can take seriously. My question is, does the Leader of the Opposition take them seriously? If he doesn't, which he must surely not, would he tell the House and would he tell his member to apologize for those comments?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister already apologized to President Trump.
Yes,
it was one of the many areas where he backed down and capitulated after claiming that he would be elbows up. He promised he'd have a deal by July 21st. No deal. Promised to negotiate a win. No wins. Mr. Speaker, he promised elbows up. Elbows are gone. And now, when he's asked about the state of the talks, he says, who cares? Why should he care? Days after he met with the president, Brookfield got an $80 billion contract with the White House. Oh. Is that really what he cares about? Does he not care about the hard-working Canadians that are counting on him to keep his promise?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Bien sûr que le Premier ministre se soucie.
Of course, the Prime Minister cares about the well-being of Canadians, our workers and industries. And that is why we are carrying out constructive negotiations with the U.S. But, Mr. Speaker, things are getting out of hand on the other side. The member for Calgary Midnapore, even this very morning, was questioning whether the Prime Minister is loyal to Canada. Can the leader of the official opposition sanction her for her comments? Or does he agree?
Prime Minister, who said, who cares? When he was asked just over the weekend about the failure to keep his promises on trade since he took office. Not only has he failed to get the promised deal, but American tariffs on aluminum, autos, and steel have doubled. On forestry communities, they have tripled. The Prime Minister says, who cares? All of us on this side of the House care about the communities that are being emptied out in our forestry, the steel workers in Hamilton who don't have jobs to pay their mortgages. We care about those people. Why doesn't he?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade relations.
Mr. Speaker, just because the Leader of the Opposition keeps repeating the same line over and over again doesn't make it real.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. I mean, the sort of, comme j'ai dit, nous sommes très occupés. Nous sommes très, très occupés avec l'avenir du Canada. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Et avec les nouveaux partenariats. Et il y aura des conversations, oui, avec le président et moi, probablement dans les prochaines 2 semaines.
Mr. Speaker, just because the Leader of the Opposition keeps repeating the same line over and over again doesn't make it real. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that our government was elected to defend Canadian workers and the Canadian economy. That's exactly what we did in a budget that was tabled in this House of Commons. The opposition decided not to support Canadian workers and provinces and territories and sectors under attack by unfair American tariffs. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to support Canadian workers and the Canadian economy and negotiate a deal with the United States.
He was a master negotiator and looked our auto workers in the eyes, promising a deal with the U.S. But now that he's failing, he's shrugging it off, saying, it doesn't matter. Who cares? And it's not a burning issue. Well, he's wrong, because it is a burning issue for Denise, an auto worker in Oxford who is losing her job. The Prime Minister literally campaigned on getting a deal with the U.S., but now since he's failing, he's brushing it off. He says, who cares, Mr. Speaker? Well, the thousands of auto workers who are losing their jobs, they care. The tens of thousands of spin-off workers who won't be able to pay their bills, pay their mortgage, feed their families, they care. Canadians do care, Mr. Speaker. So how can the Prime Minister look these workers in the eyes and tell them that their livelihoods aren't a burning issue?
The Prime Minister promised a U.S. trade deal by the 21st of July. He called himself a master negotiator. He failed. And now he says he doesn't have a burning issue to talk to the U.S. President. Meanwhile, Windsor auto workers at Stellantis, Ford, and the small businesses that supply them have a real burning issue with layoffs, shifts being cut, and a Christmas full of worry. Will the Prime Minister look these workers in the eye and tell them their jobs and their kids' futures are not a burning issue for him? Mr. Speaker, Canadians are sick of waiting. Windsor has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Families are worried about bills, factories being idled, and a real trade war, okay? But the Prime Minister himself said, who cares? And, well, Conservatives care. Windsorites care. So when will this Prime Minister treat Windsor workers like their jobs matter and take urgent action to protect their paychecks and their families? For once and
the Prime Minister was asked when he last spoken with President Trump over the ongoing trade negotiations. He literally looked in the camera and said, who cares?
Unbelievable.
It doesn't matter, not a burning issue. Let me tell you, who cares? The over 3,000 forestry workers in Caribou Prince George that are out of work. The communities that are being crushed by the softwood tariffs. Communities where jobs are disappearing and mills are closing. Families are paying the price for his failure. And the Prime Minister says, who cares? When will the Prime Minister start fighting for the workers he's abandoned? More supports. They don't want charity, they want their jobs. Literally said, he doesn't care and it doesn't matter. Are you kidding me? Seriously, over 30 mills have closed in the province of British Columbia, 14 in mine. You know who cares and who matters? Little Lucas, 10 years old in 100 Mile Elementary School, when he couldn't pull back the tears and was talking about his family that lost their jobs. Why doesn't the Prime Minister fly to my riding and tell his family, look them in the eyes and tell them they don't matter?
Exactly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister once said he was a master negotiator who could secure a deal with President Trump by July. He failed and now shrugs it off, saying who cares, and that he doesn't have a burning issue to speak with the President about. Well, I can help him. New Brunswickers care because 93% of our exports go to the U.S. The longer this issue goes unresolved, the more uncertainty there is for New Brunswick's forestry workers. You tell that to the people who live in Florenceville, Bristol, or in Plaster Rock, or in Nakawik. They certainly do care, and they want a government that responds. When will the Prime Minister secure a resolution and meet with our closest neighbor?
When the Prime Minister was asked this weekend whether he had spoken to Trump about trade, his response was, who cares? And it's not a burning issue. Well, I can tell you who does care. Conservatives care, and so do the thousands of Hamilton steel workers and manufacturing workers that go to bed every night wondering if they'll have a job in the morning. How can the Prime Minister look at Hamilton steelworkers in the eye and tell them that their job security isn't a burning issue? That is a 30-second admission of guilt and failure on this government. A response of who cares is a terrible attempt to downplay the important trade deal, how important a trade deal is for Canadian steel and manufacturing. The steelworkers of Hamilton want an answer. They want a deal that give them job security, pay their bills, and feed their families. A deal that was promised to them July 21st. So on behalf of the Canadian steel and manufacturing workers, when will the Prime Minister deliver on his promise and get a deal done?
These Liberals think Canadians should be satisfied with begging for scraps from their table. This Prime Minister said he'd be a master negotiator. He said he'd get a deal done with Trump by July 21st. He failed. Now he says, who cares? there is no burning issue. Well, Conservatives care, and so do the members of USW 5890. They're the hardworking men at Interpro Steel in Regina, and they care about their jobs. So how can this Prime Minister look them in the eye and say their jobs that feed their family aren't a burning issue?
I am programmed to destroy those life forms which are imperfect. Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Sorry about that. My mic was off. And like I was saying, I made like 16 different versions of this entry. So this is just a different one that played from yesterday. And we will see you tomorrow. So thanks for all coming out. Bye-bye.
Are missing, and now when he's asked about the fate of these thousands of jobs that rely on him keeping his word, he says, who cares?
Mr. Speaker, it's only Monday. Look at how excited they are because they know there's good news in the budget, Mr. Speaker.
If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr. Speaker.
It's too bad that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears all of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Canada know that this government has their back. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest and telling Canadians.
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
No matter how hard the days get for average Canadians, like the 2.2 million Canadians that go to a food bank every day, it's always a good day for Brookfield. And the latest good news for Brookfield is a $500 million contract with the European Space Agency, which is housed by property owned 50% by Brookfield. So why is it the priority of this government to line the pockets of the Prime Minister's former company with a $500 million contract when there's 2.2 million Canadians lining up at food banks because they can't afford to feed themselves and a 6.9% unemployment rate?